Everybody here at TV Weekly is so creative. I'm going to show you a spectacular star that came from one of our crew members.
It's who I am, a little rare, some sour fare, and some mystery, putting it all together, doing what I do, doing what I do.
Hi, I'm Tamara Berg. A couple of months ago, one of our camera operators, Jib Bob, gave me a gift at the end of a long day of taping. Now we call him Jib Bob because he operates our close-up camera, the Jib camera, and his name is Bob, hence the name Jib Bob. Okay, get out of here, we're done with you. Well, Jib Bob has a lot of time on his hands in between takes on the set, and he's very creative. So a couple of years ago, he made one of this item on one of our shows. Very cool. Well, this is actually made out of gaffer's tape, if you can believe that. It's not leather. And he also showed me his monkey knots that he made out of ends of rope. So then he gave me this star. Well, the minute I saw it, I dragged him into the rehearsal room and I said, you have to teach me how to make this, because I thought it would be very interesting to make this not out of paper, but out of metal clay paper. And this is .999 fine silver made with a binder into a sheet of paper. Now this comes in a couple of different sizes, but we're going to work with the 6-centimeter square. This is an origami project, and most of the time when you're working with origami, there isn't any measuring involved, but since we're working with metal, we want to have a minimum of waste, so we are going to do some measurements on this. We're working with a clear grid ruler, and each of the sections on this ruler is 1/8 of an inch, or 2/16, and we want to make strips that are 9/16 of an inch. So we're going to use 4 1/2 of those 1/8-inch measures. I'm going to hold this quite firmly here, and then we're taking what Tricia calls a pokey tool, and I'm just going to score right along the ruler across our metal clay. And after you score this a couple of times, it'll just break away. You can do this with a craft knife, but they don't often let me have knives on this set. So I'm just using the pokey tool, and as you see, it just pulls and separates. And there we have our first strip. So I've got another one pre-cut over here, and that's what our 2 strips look like. Now, from this point, these strips are quite small, and it's very difficult for you to see the folds I'm going to do on camera. So you keep working with metal clay. I am going to be working with paper made from trees, and we're supersizing it just so you can see the folds better. We're taking our first fold, and I'm going to be working with your orientation. So when I say left, I mean your left, and when I say right, I mean your right. Okay, so we're working with the corners and the sides. This is going to be the upper right corner, and we're going to go to the lower left side. So we're just doing a diagonal fold here, meeting up our sides on the other sides to make a perfect 45-degree triangle. There's our first fold. Next, we're going to take the bottom and throw that over to the left. We're going to do the exact same diagonal fold, and this time we're going to bring those edges right up next to each other. Don't cross over your edges here, because that will create problems in the future. Just a nice, perfect fold and a nice crease. Now, we're going to take the entire piece and flip it over. Okay, next, the bottom is going to go back to the left again in that 45-degree fold of a diagonal. Again, don't overlap. Just make sure you're nice and close and crisp. Flip it over so the tail is going down again. And this time, the tail is going to go to this side, to your right. And this is the last of our folds on this piece of paper. Same thing, diagonal, perfect, and there we have it. Now, I have calculated, so the 9/16 of an inch makes very little excess, but if you have any excess, just trim it away and reserve that for another project, and your piece will look like this. Now we need to take our other piece of paper. We're going to do the exact same folds, but in a mirror image. So in this case, we're going to take the top left corner and bring it down to the lower right. First fold, second fold, Then flip over so we have our tail. Now it's going to go this way. So you have a nice sharp fold and a nice crease. Flip it over, do our final fold toward the left, and there we have our second piece. Cut away the excess, if any, and there we have our two pieces of the star. Now you'll notice these are mirror images of each other, and it doesn't matter which way you turn them, they never look identical. They always look like mirror images. That's very important. So I'm going to refer to the sides of these for this next step. This I'm calling the cobra side. So it has a head here and a tail here. It looks a little bit like a cobra. This side is the mirrored mountain side. Okay, so you're going to take one of your pieces with the cobra side facing up, and then you're going to take the other piece, put the cobra side down and across, so you have the mountain side facing up. Now we're going to do some pre-folds here, just along this diagonal right here. We're just going to do a soft fold to help guide where that piece is going to go, and do the same thing with the bottom piece. Just a soft fold along those diagonals, and that'll help us with the tuck that we're doing just now. Okay, so you're going to take this top corner and tuck it into the seam right in the center. Then we're going to take this bottom corner and tuck that into the opposing seam. And this is where those little pre-folds really help with keeping things right where you want them. So there we have our first tucks. Now flip the whole piece over and we're going to do just the same thing. Pre-folds to make things easier on both the top and the bottom one. Then we're going to tuck the top one into the seam in between. And then we're going to tuck the bottom one in. Now this is where our pokey tool comes in handy to lift up just a little bit here so that that last tuck that goes in smoothly. And there is our finished star. So now from here, we're going to add in our hole. Now the paper does shrink about 12 to 15% when it's firing. So we do need to make sure that, first of all, our hole is far enough away from the point that we have margins that are okay and we don't break through the paper. We also want to make sure the hole is big enough so that when it shrinks, it's still large enough to accommodate the wire or the fiber that you're going to put through. So I'm going to place my hole right about here. And you can see it really does behave a little more like clay than paper. We are going to increase the size of that hole just a little bit. And there is our star ready to be fired. Now this can be done in a kiln, but it's faster and much more fun to do with a torch. We're using a heat-proof surface. This is just a paver stone, and you'll notice it's quite thick, and that's important because this piece does get hot. We're going to be firing it for quite a few minutes, so make sure that you've got a nice, heavy heat-proof surface. Now we're using just a plain butane kitchen torch for this, so I'm just going to fire up the torch. What we're going to get, first off, you can see that the binder that makes this clay is actually starting to burn away, and the piece will start to shrink just a little bit. It's quite subtle, so you may not see it right away. Now, what we want it to be is glowing at sort of a salmon pink color. And it'll take a couple minutes to heat up to that point, and then once it does, start your timer for 3 to 5 minutes. Now, you can get it too hot. If you start to see flashes of silver or puddles, you will be starting to melt that clay, and you don't want to melt the silver. So that's why you're keeping the torch moving and keeping it just a little backed off if you start to see any flashes. So we've turned the lights down a little bit, so you might start to see that glow of salmon pink, and I'm going to start my timer. We still got another 4 minutes, so. Is it hot in here or is it just me? I'm sweating. Okay, so that has been right around 4.5 minutes, turning off the torch and setting aside. Now you can just let it sit to cool down. It takes a good 5 to 10 minutes, or you can do what I'm going to do and have the very satisfying quench. Now the piece is cool. Make sure you just test it before you touch it, and it indeed is cool enough. So at this point, you'll notice the piece doesn't look silver at all. It's covered with this white crystal. So what I'm going to do is take some 000 steel wool, and basically all you're doing is just brushing off those white crystals, and look, 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 look. The silver underneath is revealed. And then you can also use a jewelry making cloth that has a little bit of rouge in it and polish that up. But when your piece is finished, it will look like this. So here is our finished Jib Bob star on a very manly leather cord. Next we have one that's a little bit smaller with a teeny tiny one at the bottom that's made out of remnants. And then we've got one here in the same size. You can actually get 2 out of 1 piece of the precious metal clay, and this is made as a bracelet. Now I wanted to talk again about the hole. It closed up a little bit when we fired it, and I just want to show you it's easy enough to take the pokey tool and just poke it in there, turn it around a little, and it enlarges that hole so it's just big enough to fit your finding through. And it all came from Jib Bob's star. And Jib Bob, this one's for you. Come on over. There you go, you're a star. Thanks. Make something beautiful. I'll see you next time.
To create this project yourself, download this week's design guide. You'll get step-by-step instructions along with special make-it-your-own bonus tips and ideas.